This is the ultimate camera comparison video of Samsung Galaxy S22 and Samsung Galaxy S23. Can you spot a difference on a blind test? Let's go to work. Let's talk about colors and visited the amazing Butchart Garden in Vancouver Island, and we took a lot of photos of flowers. And just by looking at all these flowers on a blind test and without you knowing the phone, will you say one is better than the other? Honestly, it's too close, maybe just a difference in brightness sometimes, but hey, it might just be a timing where I shot the scene or the angle of the subject. And if you're owning any of these two phones, and if you're owning the older S22, I should say there's no point of upgrading to the S23 if you're comparing it by colors. Also, just a side note, we're shooting in auto mode and the scene optimizer of both phones are active. And just by checking all three sensors from ultra-wide, wide, and telephoto, image looks similar. So the newer and more expensive Samsung Galaxy S23 is on the left. This is now the audio test of these two phones. We're shooting in UHD 30 FPS. We're now here in the beautiful city of Vancouver Island. I will talk a little bit for you to hear the difference. Check 1, 2, 3, check 1, 2, 3. The phone number 1 is Samsung Galaxy S22 and phone number 2 is Samsung Galaxy S23. Let's talk about white balance, and again, on some situations wherein there's so much clutter or the background is darker, I don't think you would know which is which. But for lighter background, you would see that the older S22 is warmer than S23. S23 tends to be neutral in tone and sometimes a little brighter too. Talking about max resolution, Samsung Galaxy S22 can shoot 8K 24 FPS, but the new Samsung Galaxy S23 can shoot 8K 30 FPS. While you see those flaring on 8K video recording, we're now talking about flaring on both videos and photos. Looking at the image side from all three sensors, I think Samsung is doing a good job on both phones. I should say because of the contrast on S23, it manages and cleans up the flaring better. Another aspect of exposure and dynamic range is the highlights, and we're shooting the bright light source outside the window. And looking outside, you would see that the phone on the left is managing it better, just a bit, not like it would own the phone on the right, that's the newer Samsung Galaxy S23. This is super steady mode and Samsung Galaxy S22 is not as sharp because it can only shoot full HD. But Samsung Galaxy S22 I think is more acceptable because the super steady mode can shoot up to Quad HD. Let's talk about sharpness, and starting with the ultra-wide sensor. It's pretty close, and it taking on the images, the right might be a little sharper. Going to the main sensor, I mean it's almost the same, just a difference in colors. And going to the 3x optical zoom, there's no difference at all. The older S22 is on the left. Instead of doing an ultimate comparison test, I feel like the blind test will provide significant insight on these two phones. Just looking at the sharpness and now the details, I don't think you would see any difference on a 12 megapixel output. Now if you go to the 50 megapixel resolution, Samsung Galaxy S23 is just more contrasty than S22, but the details looks almost the same. S23 I feel is an incremental upgrade of S22. Although the specs are better, honestly in my everyday work, I couldn't tell the difference in terms of performance. Even the build quality and design, it's a little bit uninspiring because the only change came from the minimalist camera module. I guess the biggest change is the battery life. S23 is so much better than S22, and I will leave the link for the battery test in the description below. Now let's talk about video quality, and we will start with the stabilization. We will show it one by one for you to see the full resolution and then side by side for comparison. Let's start with the ultra-wide lens, and we will do a 10 to 15 second shot, walking and running, and then we will compare it side by side. And this is the other phone. There's not much of a difference in terms of stabilization. Looking side by side, the latest Galaxy S23 is on the left. Now we're shooting with the main sensor. By the way, all of these shots are in 4K 30 FPS and the first phone is looking really good. Now this is the second phone and I notice it's a little bit brighter, but it's almost the same in terms of stabilization. Looking side by side, the more colorful video on the left is the newer Samsung Galaxy S23. And lastly, let's take a look on the 3x optical zoom, and this phone is doing a really good job on the stabilization. And this is the second phone and it's a bit darker than the first footage and the stabilization is a little bit wobbly. Going for a side-by-side test, the better performing phone on the left is the newer Samsung Galaxy S23. Let's talk about the zoom quality starting with the image, and if we zoom into the digital crop, the older S22 is on the right. Now going for a video zoom test, if we zoom into the farthest reach, the older S22 is on the left. Let's talk about portrait mode, and both phones are really good. Again, if you shoot both phones on a blind test, post this on social media or print it, you wouldn't know the difference. The colors are almost the same, even the skin tone. But there's one thing that separates both phones and that is the sharpness. I noticed that the phone on the left is significantly sharper than the phone on the right. Now talking about the bokeh on the selfie camera, the other way around, the phone on the right is blurred than the one on the left. Galaxy S23 is sharper and Galaxy S22 has better bokeh. Now going for a low light image test, which is the night shots. Again, it will be hard to see the difference on a blind test. Both phones look similar. I guess the main difference is the phone on the left is significantly sharper, but it crushes the blacks more than the phone on the right. The sharper and more contrasty phone on the left is Samsung Galaxy S23. And lastly, the low light video. The phone on the left is a little bit wobbly. And if I pan this around over to the right, you would see that the phone on the right is better exposed. This is the newer Samsung Galaxy S23. So this is the ultimate blind test of Samsung Galaxy S22 versus Samsung Galaxy S23. I would say that Samsung Galaxy S23 is a bit of an upgrade over S22, but is it enough for you to upgrade knowing most of the camera features are the same? S23 is better in 8K video recording that offers 30 FPS, a bit better stabilization and 3x optical zoom, sharper portrait mode, better night shots, and better exposure on low light video. But for the price difference from the camera to the battery life, do you think it's worth the upgrade? And there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll continue to compare these two phones in our channel, so stay tuned. And as always, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you in the next one.